So hi and welcome to this week's video. I'm going to explain what I'm looking for when someone brings in a bike with a stretch chain. It's quite a common thing and often it will involve slightly more work and customers look at me a bit perplexed. So this is a chain gauge and you can see it's worn past 0.75 and past 1%. That's a 1% stretch over 5 inches. Now chains don't actually stretch, they wear, and you can see these rollers here, they're moving, they're equivalently like a bearing, wheel bearing. They're rollering on a central spindle that wears, and you get this effect whereby the tall and low points on your chain set and your cassette wear to a larger groove, and then you start to get this play, and eventually you get skipping whereby the chain will actually skip over the top of those and you can't put the power through your pedals. So you can see here this, as you hold this chain tight onto it, you get them gaps and movement. Now as the wheel comes around, as you push down with the full torque, you get wear at the top edge. Now I could see from this chain set that this rider was a left-handed rider because these were worn more than the right-hand side. So I could see that wear. Now on the cassette, again, you can see there's movement. The chain is not grabbing the cassette tightly. Again, you would get this skipping effect on here as the torque went through the pedals. And you can see this bike was so bad that it was actually lifting off even under normal no-load pedaling. So we take off the chain. When you go into your bike shop and they say to you, oh, you need this, you need that, you need the other, it's through experience. We can see this wear because we do it every day. We see it every day. Now I'm just going to prove it to you here. It's 3.4, 307. This is with the gauge just resting on that bottom edge. And this is one that isn't worn. You can see the differences there. This is up in the 4s, the width of them, and this isn't actually a new cassette. This customer brought in a chain ring and a cassette that he said had done virtually no miles, and I could see actually just from looking at it that it was fairly new, and I could measure that to show you the difference between worn and new. Oh, and also with this bike, this back brake was dangerous. It was seized, and also the pads were so close to worn out. We actually did this work as well. But when you're doing this, as a bike comes in as a shop, you can see the wear, you can see the chain, you can measure the chain stretch in front of the customer. But when a bike shop says to you, oh, you need a chain set or you need a cassette, they're not just saying that, they're not just trying to upload the price, they can visually see it. So this again, you can see, this is the worn chain ring, and now this is the one that we're replacing it with. You can see the differences. These are nearly 1 millimetre to 1.5 millimetres wider than the worn one. If you put a new chain on a worn chain ring, it will skip actually worse than with the worn chain. So you sometimes have to replace all the components together in order to get that drivetrain working efficiently under torque and under load. And you always want to, the chain is the biggest wear of your chain set, so you want to make sure you change that before that 0.75 of wear. If you go to 1% of wear, you've just gone way too far and you're going to wear everything out. So you always want to keep an eye on your chains. So this lot's all been through the degreaser, through the ultrasonic cleaner. We're just lubricating all the pivot points. This brake is now free. This front derailleur was also seized in the big ring. The customer never uses the small ring, so it was all seized up. We freed all that up. Replaced all the bolts, a little bit of copper slip on those so that they don't stick for future if we have to change it again. And then they're all done up and torqued up. Everything's done to specified torques. Yeah, when you bring a bike in, I'll glance at a bike, I'll measure that chain, I can see instantly what you need, and then we'll advise accordingly, price it accordingly. And yeah, there's a lot more to chain sets and chain rings and wear. It's quite an experienced eye you need, but there's a lot more to it, and you can measure it yourself at home and just check. But anyway, now we're just cleaning this bike up because that's what we do here at Bike Speed, so we're just making this bike a little bit more presentable for the customer before we put it all back together. And then we're just giving it a little bit of grease on the free hub there, and on goes the new cassette. This is a Dura-Ace cassette. It was originally Ultegra, this is now Dura-Ace. So it's quite a nice cassette going onto this bike, and like I say, it didn't actually have a lot of wear in this because we measured it, we could see that. So that's just torqued up, and then we just give the rear derailleur a little lubricate. It wasn't actually that dirty, although everything was worn. This I think must have been replaced at some point because it didn't look to be as worn as everything else. Anyway, on goes the wheel. A little bit grease on everything. I do clean up all these parts. I wouldn't just undo that chain ring and change it. You need to do it right, and get everything nice and tidy. I checked the bottom bracket, that was fine. Yeah, the bike, I mean, it's quite a high mileage bike, I think we've seen this bike a few times now. And then on goes the brake. Now we actually replaced the brake pads in this as well, as freeing the brake up and adjusted it and everything. It was just yeah, this was a safety aspect more than anything. The bike was just without brakes on your back, that's dangerous, so advised to do this as well. Checked and adjusted, and you can see that's all now free and working. This front derailleur was seized, so we give this a little clean up. Freed this up as well before we started getting everything back together. So please, if you're enjoying this video, please subscribe to our channel. Check out bikespeeds.com. You can contact us on there. There's a contact page on bikespeeds.com, and you can also book in servicing and various jobs and things on that website. So if you're local to us, we're in Suffolk in the UK, you can book in. So next up, we're just putting on a new chain and we're sizing it to the bike here, and then we just give the gears a little tweak, and you can see that's now going through the gears nicely. And then the one thing, although you shouldn't cross chain, it was to show what we did originally, so you can now see there's no wear, that's not dropping in. The 100% sits right on the tip, so there's no wear there. And then this is the difference. Now you can see how that chain is grabbing the cogs tight. There's no flexibility, there's no movement, there's no light through them. So this chain set and cassette and chain is absolutely ready to ride, and you can see the differences here on the before and afters. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.